boss Igor Tuda. His first task is the North London derby against Mikel Arteta's table-topping men. Alfie is going to be with us for the best of the papers, as always, and we'll get a view from Spain on Real Madrid ahead of their clash with Benfica this evening. Now, talkSPORT has been told that Spurs interim coach Igor Tudor has the right personality to shake up the club's dressing room between now and the end of the season. The former Juventus and Marseille manager has been brought in to replace Thomas Frank and ultimately keep Spurs in the Premier League. William Troost-Ekong played under Tudor at Udinese and had this to say about the impact he's going to have.
If they need someone to shake up the place and get everyone going, then he's definitely the right person for it. So, like mentioned before, the North London derby probably the perfect game to start, and he's definitely also someone who's not intimidated by anything like that. So, a big personality. And he's going to get everyone trying to run through a brick wall. So I think that's probably been my experience with him.
William Troost-Ekong there, former player of Igor Tudor at Udinese. Remember Troost-Ekong at Watford as well?
Yeah.
Pretty good player there as well. Right, let's welcome in Chris Cowlin from the Spurs Chat Pod, because usually in seasons gone by I've spoken to Chris, obviously last year, extremely happy in Europa League, but the league form was terrible. Fast forward to now, Chris, good to speak to you, mate. What on earth is going on and how are you feeling about this appointment, mate?
Dan, Flex, good afternoon to you. Thanks for having me on. Nice to talk to you guys again. And I've been on a few times with you guys this season, and I've showed real frustration under Thomas Frank, and the football hasn't been good enough. The results haven't been good enough. Of course, it kind of mirrors our league form last season, as you mentioned there, Flex, under Ange Postecoglou, but it did finish successfully in the end with winning a trophy. But, we are now on our 10th manager in the dugout since our, moving in our new stadium. 6 permanent appointments, 4 interim appointments, and we just keep going through manager after manager. In my personal opinion, I think that Thomas Frank was completely the wrong fit. It was never going to work. There were boos week in, week out, and the type of football that he has played at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in particular hasn't been good enough. And, Tudor has now come in, and he said that we want to be brave, we want to be committed. He wants to play attacking football. He wants to play the type of football that, people want to come and watch and pay and watch. And he is not settling for draws, which frustrated a lot of Tottenham fans this season. Because I go back to the Christmas period, we played for a 0-0 draw away at Brentford. I know Brentford is a difficult place to go for the Premier League, but Spurs are just not doing this season, and it has been really, really difficult. But Tudor has come in today. I don't know whether you guys have seen the interview that he's put out today, and
no, I haven't.
It's a very different tone. It's a very different attitude. He's come out and said that the players need to take responsibility, and most importantly, he's come out and said there's no time for excuses. And that's exactly where we are right now. We've got 12 games to go in the Premier League, a minimum of 2 in the Champions League. So we've got at least 14 games in the job. And his job now is just to steady the ship and, to ultimately keep us in the Premier League for next season.
What was your initial reaction to the appointment, Chris? Because it came so far out of the left field. If you'd have gone through like the bookies odds on any bookies, I don't think you'd have seen his name anywhere. Did it take you by complete surprise as well?
Yeah, I think everyone was surprised. I think everyone in the media was even surprised. A lot of people were talking about names that are connected to the football club, either have managed us before or have a connection, either played for us, etc. But Igor Tudor is not a name that anyone, put out there. And this could be a masterclass, but then, of course, it could be an absolute disaster. But the way that he has been talking in this interview, he took training yesterday, and he just seems to be a no-nonsense manager. And he seems to be a manager that goes into jobs, steadies the ship, and he does have experience of this. He is a very experienced coach, and it does seem to be the right fit of him coming in and taking charge for the short term. And then it gives Tottenham a real chance of assessing their options in the summer. Pochettino's name, at Old Trafford a week or so ago, and most recently the Newcastle game, the fans were singing Pochettino's name. I think if you asked a lot of fans out there right now, Spurs fans want to see Pochettino's return. But what I would say to that is whoever is going to be taking the job, whoever's going to be in discussions of the job, I think that the manager needs a lot of assurances and the manager needs a lot of promises.
Exactly.
Because we can't keep going around like this.
No, it's that. Like you said, the hierarchy, and it isn't just one manager's fault, is it? In terms of the players, Chris, actually, before we continue talking about the manager and how you think he's going to do the players, you spoke there about saying he's put pressure on them and saying it's their responsibility. With the squad that will probably be available for him for those 14 minimum games, do you think it's going to be good enough to get a tune out of it? Do you think he's going to be able to access those players mentally and emotionally? Because there's some quality players, or some of your better players, that either out for the rest of the season or significantly out. Yeah. Is the squad that he's going to be able to field be good enough to get a tune out of?
It's going to be difficult, Flex. This is not going to be easy. But as he said, I'm going to use these words: no time for excuses.
Yeah,
we've got to be staying in the Premier League. These players have got to be up for the fight. I'm sure that at the start of the season that not many of the Spurs players thought that we would be in this position, only 5 points above the relegation zone. But also what you've mentioned there, we've got 11 first-team players out: Pedro Porro, Richarlison, Danso, Udogie, Kulusevski, Bergvall, Odegaard, Maddison, Bentancur, Davis. We've got injuries galore. This has been a really, really tough spell for us. We had injuries last year under Ange Postecoglou, and in my opinion, and I know we could talk about this all day and night about transfer windows. Who is ever happy with a transfer window as a fan, no matter what team you support? But Spurs should have learnt from lessons, and we should have learnt from lessons last year under Ange, and the amount of injuries that we had last year under Postecoglou, and now it's a very, very similar situation again for Thomas Frank and now Tudor. But he has to get the best out of these players. He has to go in there, and he has to look at every single player and say, look, what are you going to give me? And Arsenal on Sunday is going to be a very, very tough game. But I can tell you now, I think that the confidence, and I think that the feeling amongst the fan base is certainly different. And I'm hoping that will be the same with the players, because these last few games, or even, I dare say, these last few months, looking at the body language of some of these players walking into the stadium, either home or away, some of them look beat before we'd even kicked the ball, and that was not good enough. And Thomas Frank, I just think that it was the right time for him to go. If I had my choice, it would have probably been before, because we were kind of sleepwalking into the relegation fight, and this couldn't go on.
Is that a real big frustration for you, Chris? Like, I have my own opinions on Spurs, but when I speak to someone like you, I know that you know more about Tottenham than I do, and I know you're a reasonable fan. So you'd have wanted to have given Thomas Frank time, but you look at it now and think, you've sacked him. Why didn't you do it? Why didn't you do it earlier? Why didn't you do it before January? Why don't you give yourselves a chance? What took so long to sack him, in your opinion?
That's a very good question. The amount of boos at the stadium this year has just been unbelievable. Unbelievable. Week. Yeah, it's been a real toxic atmosphere, and sometimes you just need to hold your hands up and say, look, this is not going to work. I know the board really wanted it to work under Thomas Frank, and from what I understand, they were never wanting to be in this position midway through the season. Certainly now they wanted it to work, and they wanted him to see the season through. But we were sleepwalking into the relegation zone, and now we're 5 points above, the bottom three. And when you look as well, it's really worrying, because the likes of Forest, Leeds, West Ham, West Ham beat us only a few weeks ago at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. That should have been the turning point, because that was a real toxic atmosphere. And of course, only a couple of weeks ago as well, we only snatched a draw at Turf Moor, drawing 2-2 against Burnley. But the fans, they have really been on the back of Thomas Frank, and there is a lot of scrutiny at the moment as well on the board. Yeah, it was quite apparent months ago he wasn't going to come out of it. Really, wasn't he?
You could see he was a sort of a dead man walking. Chris, look, I know Ange's gone a long time ago, but I know you would have seen his comments on the overlap with Gary Neville and co. What are your thoughts on what he was saying, and how do you think fans in general, Tottenham fans in general, have reacted to what he's been saying? I know you've got bigger fish to fry in a relegation battle to sort of prioritise, but just wanted to see what your thoughts were on that.
It's disappointing again, Flex, if I'm completely honest, because with respect, Ange Postecoglou got us fifth in his first season in the Premier League. We played some really decent football, and in that second year, he had to put the eggs in the basket of winning the Europa League. And let's be honest, we weren't near, although we were 17th, we weren't nearly going down because of the points tally that we had. But when he said in that second season, the types of players that he wanted and the types of players that we've even targeted this season, we just haven't got those players over the line. And it is really, really frustrating. You can't bring in Dominic Solanke and 3 teenagers, with respect, I say that again, players for the future. We have a lot of players for the future, but it's all about the now, very much about the now. All clubs want to be planning for the future. I get that. But, Spurs, we have been promised many, many times that we want to be competing on all fronts. We want to be fighting for top honours year in, year out. And at the moment, we're a million miles away. And even before I come on air, you guys are sitting there talking about, top 4 and top 4 finishes, Champions League football. I want to be in this conversation as well with you guys, talking about Villa and Man United.
I was with you last season, mate, and you got in the top 4 from it all Champions League, so I don't feel sorry for you.
Let me tell you, I'd rather have you in the conversation than Flex.
Chris getting the old violins out. My sympathy doesn't go that far.
I didn't think so.
Chris, last one before you go, mate. 1, do you stay up? And 2, is your next manager Pochettino?
1, I think we will stay up. I think that we do have enough quality to stay up, certainly hoping so anyway. And number 2, I think that if you ask the majority of Spurs fans, they would certainly want Pochettino back. But, I'll go back to my earlier point. I think if I was Pochettino, or indeed another manager thinking about taking this job or even being offered the job, I'd probably sit there all day long with 1,001 questions and say, look, what is this situation? How is this going to be better? How is this going to improve? How is it going to be different from all of the other managers that have come in? And, Poch has been there before. He knows. And, it would be a wonderful homecoming for him. And, he said many times that he wants to return to Tottenham. And I think that a lot of Spurs fans, most Spurs fans will, have open arms for him. But like I said, the club need to change. The club need to change.
They do, and who knows if they will anytime soon. Chris, listen, it's been a pleasure to catch up, mate, and good luck in the North London derby. Hey, good luck in the North London derby. Chris Cowlin there from the Spurs Chat Podcast, praying and hoping that his team can just find some consistency from somewhere, from someone.
Has Harry Kane signed a new contract at Bayern yet?
I think he's about to.
Yeah.
Is it? It's coming up in the paper, so hold that thought, Dan Bardell. You're jumping the gun. You are listening to The Social on talkSPORT2.